and welcome to another edition of the 1% Better podcast with your host, Rob O'Donoghue.
Hey folks, so welcome to the first edition of the 1% Better podcast. This is the introduction episode, one that I've been looking forward to doing for over 10 weeks at this stage. So this is me, Rob O'Donoghue, and over the last 10 weeks I have been on a really interesting and enjoyable adventure or journey, interviewing interesting and insightful guests from a variety of roles and fields that include broadcasting, sport, business, entrepreneurship, self-improvement, coaching, charities. And over that period of time, I have learned so much from each of those guests, and I've been delighted to be able to capture that and turn it into podcasts that I am going to start releasing over the next few weeks to the world, or at least the world that I am connected to. And I hope that listeners enjoy them and can apply some of the learnings into their own lives. That's the whole premise of the podcast. So before I give you more information about those, maybe I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself and the podcast. So it's the 1% Better podcast, living on the Rob of the Green website. So the Rob of the Green, let's get into that. My name is Rob, that's the first part. I'm Irish, so we went for green. There's the link there. As you're probably familiar with the pun Rob of the Green, well, we decided to change that up a little bit and went for Rob of the Green. I think it, in a cheesy way, sticks in people's memory, so that was the purpose. I have to admit I didn't come up with the title or the link, but Cormac Breslin, a good friend of mine from college that lives in LA, he was the mastermind behind that. So Cormac, listening out there, I'm sure, thank you very much for that. There's your plug. Appreciate it. So that's three of the reasons. The final one, I suppose, that is my surname is O'Donoghue. That's without the letter G, which certainly has caused trouble over the years, especially with emails and the like. So I couldn't really go with robodonoghue.com because the G was always going to cause trouble unless I obviously registered multiple domain names. So that ties up where the Rob of the Green came from. Maybe a little bit about me. I'm originally from a town called Longford, which is in the middle of Ireland, County Longford. I would refer to it as the heartbeat of Ireland. I'm originally from there. Over the last 20 years, I've travelled around the country and outside of the country for college, for work, and have settled in Cork, down in the south of Ireland, in 2008. That's where I still am, and I definitely see myself here for the long haul. It's a great city, but I'll always be from Longford. So growing up, I always had a keen interest in personal development. I think there was probably a turning point when I was about 11 or 12 when I maybe got some sense or embarrassment that I wasn't performing to the level that I could or should be. And from there I got a bit of a kickstart and threw myself into studies, more academic at that point. But I always had a keen interest in psychology, personal development. And as one of the guests I talked to for one of the episodes, Andrew McLaughlin, who's an executive coach and lifelong learner himself, he put it, his interest and fascination in human potential. And I think that really summed it up. So that's something that stuck with me all the way through college, through my working career so far. And I think over the last few years, I've accelerated that learning in my own development, but also trying to develop others in my work as a manager, as a coach, and somebody that's passionate about developing talent. So that really kind of gives an overview of my journey up to recent times. It's about 4 or 5 years ago when I stumbled across podcasts. I was aware of them for a long time, but probably like many people, didn't really get the concept and never really fully understood it. So you may be nodding your head, and maybe even this might be the very first podcast you're listening to. I think the first podcast that I listened to was one called Stuff You Should Know, which is one I would highly advise you check out. It really grabbed me straight away. Maybe when I was exercising or driving or out for a walk, I was able to combine that level of exercise and activity with a learning pleasure like listening to a podcast and getting information coming in while on the go. So that really got me hooked. And then over the last number of years, was built up my interest in different podcast shows. Ones that would spring to mind would be the Joe Rogan Experience, which is quite humorous and quite varied. The Tim Ferriss Show, which has, I think, over 100 million downloads at this point, and I'm definitely stealing some of the questions and concepts from that show for my own. Sam Harris is another good podcast that I would listen to, called Waking Up. He's esoteric, I think is the word he would use himself. He is a neuroscientist and talks a lot about mindfulness and artificial intelligence and Islam and everything else besides. So one's certainly to check out. And there's one other podcast that I listen to that I'd like to call out, called the Arsecast. The host of this, Andrew Mangan, is going to be a guest on one of the shows. I've recorded that already, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the introduction to the show. So I guess listening to all these podcasts really were inspirational for me. And I think about 12 months ago or so, I said to myself, why could I not combine my love for learning and my love for podcasts and try and put together my own podcast show? Coming from a background of IT, maybe that could help a little bit, but I'm not a journalist. I'm not a broadcaster. I certainly don't have a history or experience in doing that, but I am curious and I do like to ask questions, and a coaching diploma that I'm currently doing certainly has helped me to do that and build up my confidence. So around Christmas time I said, why the heck not, just give it a go, and I've decided to create my own podcast, which I'm calling 1% Better. So as I mentioned at the start, I have had an awful lot of fun making these first set of episodes. I've learned a hell of a lot with each guest. I call it like the front row seat of learning, taking in their knowledge, their stories, their journeys. At least one or two things from every episode stuck out. And as I went through this, I realized, maybe that's something that we could aim for listeners to take on board as well. So that's where we went with, and I say we, but generally me, where I went with the 1% Better concept. So even if you get one thing from each episode that could improve or help you in one specific area of your life, I think that's certainly worth taking the 50-60 minutes of your day out and having a listen. So I'm at the point where I am ready to launch the first few episodes. Over the last few weeks, I've been working on introduction music, voiceovers, so much on top of that. I have to give a shout out to a couple of people that helped me. Early on, we got some pictures taken. Darren Ford, who is a photographer in Cork, I appreciate you taking the time and risking your life with the photo shoot. I know you were standing in some precarious places during that, so thank you very much for doing that. I would urge you to check out Darren's website, which is www.darrenford.com. I also have a friend who has been helping me put together the website. So Cathal Maguire, thank you very much. I have shared pilot episodes with a lot of friends over the last number of weeks and asked them for feedback. So appreciate you all taking the time to do that. And I guess now I'm at the point where I just want to put the show out there and see what happens. I know it's not perfect. It's certainly improving each episode that I put together, working with sound and editing and all that other good stuff. It's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say about it. So I am going to leave it there. I promise myself I try and keep the intro episode under 10 minutes, because I'm wondering, would anyone want to listen to 10 minutes of me just talking about why I'm doing this? Hopefully you do. If not, feel free to stop at any point and go to one of the episodes, but do go to one of the episodes. What I'm really looking forward to is hearing your feedback, and you can do that through so many different methods. The email address is rob@robofthegreen.ie. There's a feedback page on the website, www.robofthegreen.ie. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Rob of the Green. So please do take a few minutes out and get in touch. And really, that's all I have to say for now. The episodes are going to be dripped out over the next few weeks, and we'll get into a one-a-week cadence hopefully around then. And I'm really looking forward to getting it out there. It's been a long journey. It's been exciting. So I hope that continues and I get in touch with really excellent, interesting guests into the future like I have done so far. Thank you and enjoy.